And then that next storm arrives Saturday night, and we keep it cool through next week. Hey, thank you for watching. NBC Nightly News is next. After that, next week, how work.
Sponsored by Scandinavian Designs. We make it simple. You make it home.
Last week, this guy never stole this package off my porch. Because this doorbell camera doesn't just record crime, it prevents it. If your doorbell doesn't do this, you need a Vivid Smart Security System. Learn more at Vivid.com.
You're almost there.
Hi, Paul. It's Debbie. I'm just checking. Would you like to address the commission tonight?
Yeah, I did have I had a couple of things that I wouldn't mind saying. I don't know
Okay.
if it would be better to say it during the public comment period, or if we just want to roll all the off-leash comments into the off-leash period. If that's, I don't know if that's too irregular to to work
Yeah.
it that way. But if you just want to call on me during the, I did see that there is an off-leash, or I guess that's the
Yeah.
primary meeting agenda item. So if you just want to call on me, then that would be fine too.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Does that work, Christina? And Christine, you're good? Okay.
I think that's fine, since that's really our main topic tonight.
Okay.
Okay, well, we're at 5:30 and I think, well, the majority of us are here. Mark will not be joining us, so I will be leading the meeting. So I will call the meeting to order and we'll.
Okay. Vice Chair Christine Adams.
Present.
Monica Johnson has not joined in yet. Karen Miller.
Present.
Kate Truesdell.
Present.
Stephen Young.
Here.
Jim Woodward.
Here.
Councilmember Stone has not joined in. Inglewood Schools Liaison Gary Manfrey has not joined in. Excused, we have Chair Mark Husbands. Guest, we have Steve Charbonneau, facilitator of the Off-Leash Subcommittee. And guest also, we have Paul Rogala. Monica Johnson is now joining us. Hi, Monica. And staff,
Hi.
we have Director Christina Underhill and Open Space Manager Dave Lee. Did I get everyone? Okay.
So wonderful. Okay, so approval of minutes. The minutes were attached to the agenda. If I could get a motion to approve the minutes from November 12th, unless there are any changes.
I'll move the minutes of November 12th as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Okie dokie. Let me just run through this agenda. I think the only thing we have on it is the Off-Leash Subcommittee. So I will turn it over to you, Christina.
All right, great, thank you. So let me share my screen here, and this is a presentation that we're going to be giving to our city council Monday night. I don't know if it went to, there, is it, you guys can see it? Okay, let me know if for some reason the slides don't progress. So with us tonight, we have Steve from Find Solutions, who's been the moderator for the Off-Leash Task Force that's been going on now. I believe we had 5 meetings, maybe 6 total. And really the goal was to find a consensus for the existing off-leash program and what it could be moving forward. So I'll move to the first slide and let Steve take it over. And there's 2 items on the agenda. One is the Off-Leash Task Force consensus, and then the survey that we'll be doing. I'll cover that as part of this presentation. So we'll wrap it all in kind of one. All right, Steve, it's all yours.
Okay, I need to get off mute. Sorry about that. Thank you for the opportunity of talking with you and kind of sharing what we did. There were a number of meetings, and I think I've kind of got the summary of them put together in the PowerPoint that you've got. So let me move through that. My understanding was that City Council had asked our task force to work together to reach a consensus on the best. And by that, I defined it as safest, equitable, and achievable way to address the needs and desires of the community with respect to designation of off-leash dog areas within Inglewood. Our task force was comprised of dog owners and park users and Pirate Youth Sports and Inglewood Unleashed, and we had some non-dog owners, and then we had city staff from Parks and Rec and Code Enforcement. So we had a pretty good committee, and we had opinions that spread all the way across the spectrum when it came to that. I wanted to just briefly, let me go back to just a second, Christine. I do want to say something about consensus. I do a number of these kind of task force, and as you can imagine, when they're difficult, complicated issues, it's pretty close to impossible to get everybody to say, whoa, that's the very best thing in the world. I got absolutely everything I was hoping for. And so I spent a little bit of time throughout the process, at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, saying, for me, and in order for us to move forward, consensus is not walking away with everything you want, but feeling at least reasonably comfortable. And I would say in this instance, I know that there are individuals on all of the different points of the spectrum who wish that parts of this or components of this might be slightly different. But I would say that I think we balanced out a lot of the requests, a lot of the requirements, as well as the safety and equitable and achievable pieces in a way that I think is a consensus that we could all get behind coming out of the committee. So I guess with that, Christina, you can jump to the next slide. Overview of our recommendations. We came out looking at a distribution saying we need off-leash in 6 parks and we need on-leash in 11. And it's important that those are in all of the quadrants of the city. So if you look over at the right, you'll see the little stars, and that's where we're recommending off-leash parks are, or there's a portion of the park that is off-leash. You'll see they're spread around. You'll see that they are in all of the quadrants of the city. The other thing we're recommending is that the hours of operation are expanded from what they are now. They'll actually be from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. And we also spent some time talking about park maintenance, and we specifically looked at that. There's regular park maintenance like fixing broken sprinklers and mowing the lawn and those kind of things. And there's some long-term park maintenance that might require some reseeding, fertilizing, some enhancements and those kind of things. And then lastly, we talked briefly, not a lot, but briefly about a licensing program. Here's kind of the overview of what we looked at in the off-leash parks, and I'll give a lot more specifics in some of the following slides. The 6 that we feel would best accommodate off-leash either in total or in a portion of them would be Canine Corral, Jason Park, Cushing Park, Emerson Park, Northwest Greenbelt, and Duncan Park. In that, the off-leash considerations, we talked about the maintenance and the hours already. We felt that as a group, it's important to take advantage of some of the state-of-the-art and creativity when it comes to designing. Can we put in picnic tables? Can we put in benches? Can we provide shade? There are some parks where we may be able to get some water in. So we want to look at that. And also we looked at fencing briefly. Not your just typical chain link fence, but we've got some that I think look a little bit better than that. And we also thought about, is there an advantage to small dog, large dog park, or active or passive areas within the park? So that's kind of what we looked at when it came to that. These are the on-leash. And so all of the other parks, 11 of the parks, you can still take your dog to them. It'll just be required that you keep your dog on leash. And so this is a listing of the parks that, are certainly dogs are welcome, pets are welcome. but it would require your dog to be on leash. So if we start looking at the specific parks and the specific recommendations, let's start with Canine Corral, and this one's in place. This is just kind of a picture of what that currently looks like, and just adding it to the 6. So this one would not change. There'd be nothing different about this park. Cushing Park, we feel that we can get a fenced off leash area up in the right corner. We think that that's about 0.6 acres. It is located just south of Dartmouth. That's a street that's running across the top of your screen there. And it's a part of the park that is not used that much for any other activities. So we felt that, we could do some work up in that area, we could fence it, and it would be an asset to have a off-leash area up there. And that's, just over half of an acre in Cushing Park. Duncan Park. There was a lot of discussion back and forth, and I should say that there's been trade-offs. That's what I mean when I talk about coming to consensus, because there's been some athletic fields that have been lost. There's been some space that is currently off leash that has been lost, and so both sides have kind of lost a little bit of that. And in Duncan, that is exactly an illustration of that. There's currently a field. Athletic field up in the north of that picture in the fenced off area. That would go away, and we would actually have a fenced off area that is probably a little more than 5 acres. We, in our proposal, did not define it exactly, but did talk about putting a fence somewhere right where that yellow dotted line is, and maybe just having a one fence that goes across there. With some signage at the sidewalk points. So it wasn't quite so four-sided fenced in, a little more versatility when it comes to that. And the park, it could be the path around the park could be used by all of the different park users. However, if a dog was going to be using with their owner, the south part of the park, they would need to have their dog on leash, even if they were going to be using the sidewalk down on the south park. That kind of keeps the activated portion of the park separate from the dog activated portion of the park. That again would require the sacrifice of an athletic field in that one. Emerson Park, we talked about that and felt that we probably could make that an off-leash park without a fence. It's about an acre. It currently doesn't have picnic shelters, playgrounds, or the kind of situation that would produce or has produced in the past conflicts between park users and off-leash dog park users. And so we thought this might be a great place to provide that, sort of unfenced off-leash area. We would probably look at making some of those, eventually some of those improvements to the park, maybe some benches, maybe, a picnic table, something like that, but we would not fence. At this point, we wouldn't fence. We did at least mention that if it became a problem, we would be able to provide or to fence that part of the park. But at this point, we're proposing an off-leash, no fence park. Jason Park, by far the most discussion happened with Jason Park. And we probably had 4 or 5 different iterations of what might work. And this is what we came up with. Again, I would say that there are sacrifices involved on everyone's part when it comes to Jason Park. There would be a fenced area for off-leash dogs. You see that in the top right-hand corner. It's right next to the parking lot. It's about 1.5 acres. And it would be fenced. You could run your dogs off leash in that area. On the other side of the park, there would be a sports field. There would be a fence around that sports field. It could be utilized for any kind of sports activity. It would not be limited to just reserved sports activities, but it would not have, at this point, we're not proposing off-leash dogs in that park, just for a number of reasons: maintenance reasons, conflict reasons, resource reasons, just some of those different kinds of issues that would be necessary to preserve that field. The other thing that is important in that is that's the only place in Inglewood where we have one of Inglewood's parks that actually could provide a full size soccer sports field for the use of pirate sports. And so for their older kids, that's just really pretty much absolutely necessary. So that's why we went with that. And then the area of the park down in the bottom right, again, dogs are welcome down there as they are in any of the other parks. They would just need to be on leash. Northwest Greenbelt, there's a large amount of off-leash, non-enclosed dog area. There would be a playground area where the dogs would be prohibited, but you've got a lot of off-leash. It's currently that way. It would remain that way. We would, at least initially, we would signage the playground so that it would be off or prohibited from dogs usage. We wouldn't fence it initially. Down the road, if it became a problem, then we would consider fencing the playground just so we didn't have the unnecessary interaction between dog owners and playground users or dogs and playground users.
All right, so actually let's take any questions from the commission.
Christina, and let me see if there's any questions, comments at this point. And I can't see everybody, so if you want to call on people or if you want to wave your hand or whatever you want to do for that.
Yeah, Christine, if you can see, I'm in presentation mode, so I can't see the group.
I have a number of questions.
Okay.
Go for it.
I have concerns on Jason Park and Duncan Park.
Okay.
Starting with Jason Park, I'm seeing, if I can find my.
And let me just, Christina, do you want to pop that slide back up for us?
Yep.
There we go.
I'm seeing this 1.5 acre fenced off leash area that is the majority of the park area that historically has been used not only for off-leash dogs, but years ago, before there was the off-leash dogs, it was the area to the south, closest to the playground area, was used by the community for volleyball after work, with certainly more than one. I haven't seen any volleyball going on there in years. And with that fenced area, I don't think this is the current picture of Jason Park with the new playground area. I don't know, is it Christina?
I believe you're correct. It might be under construction in this picture. Actually, this was just a Google Earth shot, but yeah, to address your concerns, we had Lindsay Peterson as part of the task force, who's our open space activities supervisor. And this was part of the concession of looking at activities that were happening in the park. And for the most part, Pirate Sports uses this area for the little guys on occasion for t-ball or whatnot. And so there was discussion of how we can move them to a different location to accommodate off-leash. So again, it kind of goes back to Steve's point on consensus, and we had to give and take a little bit on both sides to get to this conclusion here.
So you're walking through the playground area to get to the sports field. Is that what I'm seeing?
There'll be a sidewalk that will lead you, and that's part of Jason Park Phase 2 renovation. So we weren't able to add that in this picture, but there'll actually be, where that yellow line is, there'll be a fence there, and then there'll be a sidewalk that will lead you to the sports field or to the playground or the picnic shelter.
If I can jump in, Christina, for a second. This photo of Jason Park is at least 4 years old. That's the original playground out there. And the new playground that's there now is much smaller footprint. So we'll have more area in that vicinity to have access to the sports field. It won't nearly be cut off as much as it's shown here. The other thing that I did want to mention too, these are approximations on where fencing goes. we're going to have to go out and do a survey and get the fence in the proper area so that all these pieces can function. So just understand that this is an approximation.
Okay, I guess I'm of the opinion that taking an acre and a half out and designating it as a fence off-leash area in Jason Park is giving up a whole lot of community park area that historically has been used by the community. Duncan Park, the same comments. Where the alternate fence is, why wouldn't the alternate fence go up to where the fenced area would have been and open up some green space for people that are laying out in the grass or running around, kids running around and hanging out?
So I would go back to Dave's comment. We approximately put the fence where we thought, it might go. That'll all have to be looked at a bit closer. I would also, while I certainly appreciate your comments, I heard lots of comments on the committee from the folks who were representing the off-leash constituents who were saying, why are you taking so much space away from us? And so it was that sort of tug of war back and forth between how do we accommodate what the requests are from the off-leash group, at the same time the requests from those who don't want dogs either running all around on the park or want a more restrictive use.
I think with fenced areas, you're getting the off-leash designated areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they're designated, they can't be reused. We're changing the hours. So not to provide in the summertime, spring and fall, the daytime hours for sporting events. So those are all going away at Jason and Duncan.
Right.
Except for the big field.
The other thing that I would like to point out with Duncan, as you're looking at the proposed fenced area there of a half an acre, when you look at it from my standpoint, that's starting to get awful small. And I have concerns about being able to maintain that in turf grass. So I would like to see something larger on that north end, like that proposed fencing where the blue arrow is and the bright yellow larger dashed line is, or even a little bit further, divide the park in half to give as much space to the dogs and the dog owners, but also so that we are able to maintain and keep that grass out there. That's the biggest concern that I have with all of these off-leash areas, is maintaining grass.
I have a question about Duncan Park, because in our off-leash committee meeting, I did not think that this was going to be fenced. I thought there was just a fence separating the north side and the south side by the playground, not that there was going to be a full fenced off-leash area. Because I think that for me, that changes this like a lot.
I think you're correct. I think we were looking at just that fence that goes across the
Yeah.
south.
Yeah.
The other thing that does in Duncan is it doesn't restrict the north end of the park to just dog users. So if I want to go in and set up a volleyball net and play, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
It still leaves that space open.
Yeah. Are we doing that? Are we putting a fence around it, or are we keeping it just a divider fence?
I think we need, my understanding is we're presenting both of these here on this one slide as an option. And it's helpful to get your feedback and other people's feedback to say, okay, yeah, I could go with this, but I'm not happy with that.
Yeah, one consideration with the full fence is the conflict piece, to reduce conflict by fencing it all in. And that's kind of the hot topic, is reduce conflict. So I think both options could be on the table. For now, we still have a ways to go with the survey that's coming out. We'll get some more information about the appetite for full fences or not. And then council's opinion too of, do we want to keep this park more open or close it in for safety and reduction of conflict reasons?
My recommendation would be to use the single fence and see how that works and start out that way with the option of closing it off if people aren't respectful.
Makes sense to me.
And I guess I would again voice that where your line is there, I think I would move further to the north to give more green space, more park area space to the kids and to the people that utilize the park that aren't coming with dogs or. I also have questions on the off-leash slide 8 or page 8, I think it is. You've mentioned at least one small, your last bullet, at least one small dog or large dog active or passive area. What does that mean and how does it relate?
We talked about whether or not we could find a place to more importantly, probably find a place where if you wanted to take your small dog and you didn't want your small dog to have to interact or deal with a large dog, you would have a place for that small dog to go. Or if your dog was older, or if your dog was more passive, you would have a place for that dog to go.
That's something that over the last 18 years that I've been dealing with off-leash privileges that I've heard repeatedly through the years, particularly from people who have very small dogs, Chihuahuas, very docile dogs, that they would like to see somewhere in the system an area where their dogs could go without being run over by the larger, more playful, more aggressive dogs.
Right. Dave, a question for you on that too then. In the past, or going way back to the original Canine Corral and the rules for off-leash there was a certain age. Puppies weren't allowed in Canine Corral. That was part of the rules. Young dogs, because of what could happen to them. And evidently it did happen to a dog here in the past week. I guess I'd have a comment of Jason Park. If we went with that large area or something like that, maybe to put 2 fences there and rotate the areas as a for small dogs only, one half of it for large dogs. And the ones where there's the small dogs, they're not going to wear that area like the larger dogs. So that might be an idea on rotating. I don't know.
Okay, appreciate that.
And then I also had a question about the registration fees. We had talked in the past, going back literally years, about registration and fees, resident fees and non-resident fees to help offset and pay for some of the maintenance and what's going on. Was that discussed at all?
It was, yes. We didn't want to try to get too far into defining what those costs for licenses were. And when Christina walks through the survey, you'll see a little bit about it there. But yes, we did discuss that. We discussed that in the context of residents, non-residents, the cost, all of those kind of things.
Okay. Thank you. That's my thoughts and opinions, and I do appreciate all the work that the task force has put into this and all members that have been there. So thank you.
Thanks for your opinions and your questions, and we're doing our best to get this right. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, I have some I have some comments and questions, I guess. This proposal almost seems like we're expanding our off-leash opportunities. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like we're taking permittable field space that Pirate Youth Sports uses for youth programming from both Duncan and Jason and turning those into dog only, maybe dog only areas. If we fence them, they're certainly going to be dog only. And I know Christina mentioned that there's a possibility of giving them space elsewhere, but I would like that to be guaranteed. If we're going to be taking permittable space from Pirate Youth Sports, we need to guarantee them space elsewhere. And I would like to see that in the proposal. I have a dog. I love my dog more than anything in this world, but I have a really hard time taking public space away from the public, especially children, and giving it to dogs. Even though I have my dog and I love my dog, I would prioritize youth sports over off leash. So I'd like to hear more about what Pirate Youth Sports is getting out of this deal. Cost for fencing, we already can't afford a lot of our maintenance needs. I don't know where this money is going to come from if we have to provide fencing. The other cost, I don't know if we're going to be able to keep up with, and Dave is certainly more of the expert in this than I am, is the maintenance costs. As soon as you fence off an area and make it a dog park, are you really going to irrigate that space anymore? Are you really going to maintain it to the same level as you would a field? And if not, it's just going to become a dirt dog park like everywhere else. And I mean, I work for the city and county of Denver, and we certainly can't maintain a dog park to the level that we would maintain a bluegrass park. So I don't know if we can keep up with those maintenance needs and those maintenance costs. So that's a concern of mine if we're going to be fencing off all of these particular areas for dogs. Let's see here, maintenance of fields. And then I was just wondering, we're adding Emerson and Cushing to the menu of options. What parks are we no longer permitting off leash? Centennial perhaps, and then am I missing another one?
I saw just Centennial.
So it seems to me that we're adding to it, adding to our off leash and adding to our dogs. And again, I like to be a team player, and I'm totally on board with having off leash areas for dogs, but I just want to make sure that our residents, all of our residents, are being represented here in our public space, which is for the public. So that's all I have for now.
I'd like to address some of Christine's comments.
That would be great. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, there are, we do have 6 new proposed parks. I think all sides made some sacrifices, including Pirates Youth Sports. When I look at things, also, you are correct about maintaining small areas with dogs in them. We will certainly do our best. Steve mentioned in the beginning of the presentation about long-term and short-term maintenance. What was not described was I envision that some of these areas will have to be closed for a period of time, and that could be up to 3 months. So having the additional dog space where people can continue to go to other areas, other parks, I think is crucial for the success of this program. You're right, we can't maintain a ½ acre, an acre and a half to the same standards that we do a normal park or an athletic field. And therefore, it's going to be important for us to be able to close a park at a time, a dog park, and reseed, resod, fill in holes, do whatever we need to bring the grass back before we invite the dogs back in.
Is that from a staff perspective,
Yes, it is.
the time and money to continue to do annually?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
We do have an attendee comment, and so, but I'd like to defer to the commission if there are more comments before we move to Paul.
I
I
would
mean-
just like to echo what Christina was saying about all of those things and kind of, I also feel like it's more of an expansion of the program than what our original recommendations were. And I have my concerns about some of these things that, you know, by making it more dog friendly, we're going to have more people in here with complaints and issues going on. I have a lot of concerns that this is just going to make the problem worse, but I did feel like, you know, the citizens were involved in this process and they were able to kind of come together. So that is kind of where I was hanging back more while we were discussing this. I would be interested if, you know, Stephen, you had any thoughts or feelings about this, or anyone else. And I don't know. I mean, the other thing I think is we are going to get the survey results, and maybe we'll hear from a lot of citizens that they don't love these ideas. That's kind of where I'm standing. I just wanted to share what I was experiencing through this whole process with you guys.
Thanks, Kate. I appreciate that. And I also don't want to diminish the work of you, Steve, and the stakeholder group that was gathered, because, you know, if this is the consensus, I absolutely respect that. I feel like it's my duty as vice chair to
Definitely, yeah.
my concerns, but I very much appreciate the work that everybody has put into this and the compromises that have been made. Stephen, I don't want to call on you. If you have something to say, please feel free.
Let me just jump in for a minute and say I do think it's important to raise the hard questions, and I appreciate, you know, anybody being willing to raise those questions. I know that, you know, I've had conversations with the Pirate Youth Sports side, and they said, yes, we are giving up some fields, but we're also hanging on to some of the portions that are critically important to us, and they're going to be a lot more usable now that we don't have interference with off-leash dogs. We don't have to worry about cleanliness. Those areas that we do have we're going to be able to utilize them much better. I also had conversations with the off-leash side of the conversation. And yeah, they feel like they're losing some of the wide run of the parks that they had. But they are getting parks in the different quadrants. They are getting parks that will be maintained. So there are trade-offs, and that's just part of the challenge of reaching something that works in this kind of a situation.
Sure. Thank you for that background as well.
Can I also add a little additional background on some of that? Pirates Youth Sports, with their soccer program, took over Inglewood Soccer Association, which had failed in the last few years. They had what I would call a weaker board. But having been a coach at Inglewood Soccer Association, board member for lots of years, we had kids playing, over 600 kids per season. And so I think the last season that Pirates Youth Sports played, they had somewhere around 200. And for spring of this year, they had registration closer to 300, I think. But that's still half of what we've had in the past. And we've had all with, you know, the changes that have happened within this community in the last 5 to 6 years, with all the houses that have changed hands, all the young people that have come in, all the kids that have come in. This was an older community. It's a much younger community now. Also, Parks and Rec, what was it, Dave, 4 or 5 years ago, quit providing programmed youth sports. And that has made it even more so for the community to provide it through sports association. And I think Pirates Youth Sports is just going to get bigger. And it's, you know, it's always been, well, Inglewood has been historically a real volunteer community, and the community has participated. And I think some of this is making it a lot harder. So Christine, and Kate, I appreciate your comments with that. And I think Karen knows it, that, I mean, she was involved in it too. So anyway.
Appreciate that. Are there any other questions, comments?
Steve, I did want to ask something real quick. It kind of tacks on to what Christine was asking, and I know we didn't really raise it during the subcommittee meetings, but and Dave Lee, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Haven't we struggled for a couple of years now just to try to get funding set aside to make Cushing fenced? Were we planning on putting some kind of cost estimate into the proposal for city council, or are we solely saying this is what we came up with, and then based on their recommendation, we then go establish cost?
I want to let Dave or Christina speak to that.
Well, I don't hear Christina chiming in. Yes, this isn't something that's just going to happen immediately. We've got some funding, capital funding to redo all of Cushing Park. And that was one of the priorities, is that fenced dog area there. So these things will happen over a period of time and not immediately as funds become available. I think some areas can be done sooner than later. Fencing, for instance, at Jason Park is probably something that is affordable for us right now, that we can do that. We're not changing anything at Emerson, or that's the recommendation. So there really is not a great deal of cost there. If we put in a dividing fence at Duncan, again, it's a very minimal cost. But moving forward, as we prepare budgets for 2022 and on, we'll be looking at these costs so that we can implement and build these parks, these off-leash areas.
So Dave, correct me if I'm wrong though, I thought when we were discussing before that the requirements for establishing an off-leash dog park wasn't just fencing. I thought there was actually like grading and survey for drainage and stuff like that too, and that was the higher cost of the fence. Was that not the case, or am I misremembering?
You're correct, Steve, and I think what you're referencing there, one was Canine Corral as an unimproved area, and we had to remove a large quantity of dirt and asphalt and concrete in there. We had a floodplain to deal with, things like that. I think you're going to run into some of the same issues looking at Cushing Park in that unimproved area as well. There's some topography there that we're going to have to assess as well. But when you look at Duncan or Jason or Emerson, those areas are pretty much ready.
Okay, I appreciate it. And the only thing I might put into the proposal, if we're not directly sending costs to city council, would be something like a recommendation on time frame, because things like Emerson, like you said, can be done fairly quickly, where all of a sudden if they decide to make Emerson off leash, that's flipping a switch. Whereas if we had to spend a year or 2 or 3 years to get funding for some of the other parks, that we kind of put that in as far as laying out time frame, because I know both Pirate Youth Sports and Inglewood Unleashed and the other dog owners through all of the negotiation and frustration as part of the subcommittee meetings are probably going to go through this and I don't know how happy they'll be saying, oh, we spent all this time doing this, but this change is going to happen in 4 years or something like that.
Yeah, ultimately our goal is to implement when COVID's over, and that's the direction we've been given by council. Nothing's going to happen with any of this until things, restrictions are lifted and COVID is gone. So again, when I go over the survey results won't even be in until March, and we'll go to council in April. And so we'll have that council meeting. It may be more than one meeting, depending on the feedback we get and the additional research we may have to do. But ultimately, like Dave said, we do have funding next year to make improvements to Cushing and easily add in Jason if that's the direction that council gives. There's a lot of X factor right now, and that's kind of why we haven't done a ton of work on cost estimates just yet because we've got to get more of this consensus and find out of council. And hopefully Monday night when we go to council, we'll get a little bit of understanding and direction of maybe really what they're thinking with or without the survey. And so that gives us a couple months to do additional work in the interim to answer some of these questions, even the ones you guys are proposing tonight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the survey works out. If the similar one we had locally was like 50-50, if we go spend all the time and we get the exact same results from a wider group of people.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's more defined.
Okay, so unless there are any other comments from the commission at this point, I'd like to give Paul the opportunity to speak. He has graciously spent a lot of evenings with us the past 6 months or so. So Paul, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Christine. I guess I'll start off the meeting, the last meeting we had December 1st. I thought it was a pretty remarkable meeting in that a lot of people were surprised by what Steve put into this final document. There were some things that I wasn't expecting to see, and there were some things that I think other people weren't expecting. All in all, and I can't speak for everybody at Englewood Unleashed, the off-leash community. But I thought it was a pretty well-reasoned. I thought it was a pretty rational, well-balanced for all the talk that's gone on in the last few months, weeks. I thought it was a pretty well balanced document. I think everybody in the group would probably have at least some minor tweaks that they'd like to make to it. As Steve talked about earlier in answering some of your questions, there are still some fine tuning and some definition that needs to go on, exactly where the fences go, exactly how much fencing there is, and so, I think those are still some things that need to be worked out. I've talked in terms of presenting it as an idea or a concept. I've presented it to over the last week and a half. I've presented what's in here as it relates specifically to Jason Park, bringing it up to off-leash users at Jason Park. And I found a couple of different mindsets. The weekday evening users, I think, are pretty okay with how this plan lays out. The two primary questions that I've gotten are, how far west is the westerly fence going to be? We all have sort of different ideas of where we would like to see that. And then the other question, which has been raised and sort of answered by Dave a little bit, is where's the money going to come from to put this fencing in? The other mindset comes from the weekend morning crew, who are not as enthralled with this. And I can, from their, I can see their reasoning, for people who come to the park at 6:30 or 7 on Saturday and Sunday morning. They never see anybody else on the fields. They never see anybody else on the playground there. So they never have interaction with anybody else. I've tried to explain to them that we're trying to keep things as simple as we can. Part that my sense is that Parks and Rec would like to keep the off-leash plans for these parks as simple as we can, and trying to introduce different areas, different hours, different you know, you can be off leash here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, except when you can't because there's a game, or things like that. Just making it more complicated is something that adds difficulty to being able to enforce the rules that we do have. Let's see. I had with respect to Jim's question about the small dog, large dog separation. I know there was some talk about the new park at Cushing. Maybe that could serve as a small dog specific park, since that's a new park. Maybe trying a new concept there of just having the small dogs there might be a way to provide that, to provide that specific space. I share. I think for those of us who were on the committee from Englewood Unleashed, we share Kate's concern about having a fully fenced in area. I think maybe for Duncan Park, if we had more of a half or three-sided fence, if we had a fence, had a fence running along the south side and then maybe part way up the east and west sides of the park, maybe that's a workable solution. And maybe to Dave's point about maintenance, if we could somehow run the east-west fence almost out to the walk and then contour the fence along the walk so that it kind of minimizes the interaction of lawn mowing and maintenance, with the fence, not having to cross over the fence quite as much there. I know Dave and I talked about this at the Jason Park open house. This gets to the question of actually adding off-leash space, that Dave and I talked at the Jason Park open house a couple of months ago, and he and I talked about how we had both looked at Google Earth and just trying to find where are some more empty parcels in Englewood where we could put an off-leash park, whether it's a green space, or more of a mulchy type space like the Canine Corral. And it's really hard to come up with a sizable space that's not currently being used or not currently being hemmed in on one or more sides by development. I think some of those comments and questions were ones that I already had, and some of them I was just trying to address what's already come up. Does anybody have any questions for me at all?
I don't have any questions. I really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate you participating to the level that you have, and just being so respectful about this conversation, because I know how heated this all can get at times. So thank you for your participation in this entire process. Do any commissioners have any questions for Paul? Great. Well,
I would just echo your comments on appreciation for Paul and his comments and his participation.
Thanks, Steve. If there are no other comments about this subject at this time, Christina, maybe we can move on to the survey.
Christine,
Got
I,
it.
I do. had problem finding my mute button or on.
Oh, sure, no problem, Jim.
But I do have a question for Paul. Paul, have you talked to anybody at the park that's going to be a Centennial Park about eliminating that as an off-leash area?
Hmm.
I mean, anybody from Inglewood on Leash actively there?
We don't have anybody specifically tasked with being at, with talking to people from Centennial Park. I know in my discussions with people, I know there are, I have talked with a couple of people who do use Centennial. Unfortunately, it doesn't, Centennial doesn't seem to have an advocate in the way that, maybe places like Duncan and Jason and Emerson, have had. And I think when it came time to, I just think that, and the people who have gone to Centennial, when I've approached them with the idea of losing that, I think the fact that we're keeping as much of the other parks as we are, I think it makes it less of a problem. I know part of what Steve was trying to do with the consensus document was to put off-leash areas in all the corners of Englewood, to make sure that all the areas had some off-leash area close by. And being that the Canine Corral was already there to service the southwest part of town, that Centennial was a place that we could probably drop off the map. And really, it doesn't, even though we're generally champions of having as much off-leash area as we can and trying not to lose any of it, we realize as part of this process that we're going to lose some, and that seemed to be an area, like I said, that didn't have an advocate for it. It didn't have a large following, of a large group of people who go there. So I think we just I have to get more specifically answering your question. Yes, I have talked with a couple of people who go there on a semi-regular basis, but it didn't seem to be a terrible loss for them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the survey.
All right, so we're going to be working with the National Research Center in Polco to develop a survey. It's actually in development now in very draft form. We'll be creating it in both English and Spanish, and it will be online. So 5,000 homes will be randomly selected throughout Englewood. We're focusing only on Englewood residents. No surveys will be sent outside of Englewood. The surveys will be geocoded, so we can identify the location of the completed survey, and they'll be given a specific access code when they receive their postcard asking them to fill out this survey. So this is hopefully going to put some people at ease who, I believe the last survey went out to anybody could fill it out, no matter where you live, and give input on how Englewood should run their parks. And so the goal of this one is to be very specific to Englewood. You can only fill out the survey once. It will help it remain statistically valid. And so ultimately you'll get a postcard if you're selected, and it'll have the URL link on there for you to follow to fill out the survey. If you haven't filled out the survey within a week or two of receiving the first postcard, you're going to get another postcard saying, please fill this out as soon as possible. If somebody doesn't have access to a computer and they receive the postcard and would like to participate, we'll have a contact information. They can call the city. We'll actually give them a printed survey. They can fill it out. We'll get it back. It'll be inputted in to the system so they can be counted. And then after February 10th, which will be the deadline for the 5,000 randomly selected homes to fill out the survey, and I'll show you the timeline here in a second, we're going to open it up. So anybody can fill this out, and this gives all Inglewood residents a chance, and potentially other residents that surround Inglewood, like Denver, Littleton, Sheridan, they can fill it out too. But it will be identified where they're coming from, whether they're a resident or not. And this gives everybody an opportunity to have their voice heard through the survey process. So if you don't get the survey, please participate if you can. This is the timeline. Right now we're in development process. It's draft format. We're receiving staff comments back on this. When we have the final draft ready to go, not the final, but the draft form still, we'll be sending this out to you guys, the commission, as well as the Off-Leash Task Force and our city council, for you all to make comments on the survey, to make sure we're capturing the information that's going to be relevant to make the final decisions when it comes to off-leash programs. So ultimately the goal is to get this draft questionnaire done by the 21st of December. It'll be translated into Spanish by the end of the year. We're going to look at mailing the initial postcards January 6th. The reminder postcard will be January 13th. We'll receive the data through February 10th from the random sample survey that'll be statistically valid. The open participation survey then will open on February 10th, be open until March 3rd. And then Polco is going to do their work on analyzing the survey, and they use so many different data points, different survey, different methods to ensure we're getting data that's accurate, that's valid, that we can use. And then we'll get the draft report sent to us March 24th. Ultimately, the goal is to get to council in April to present all of this. And so during that meeting, they'll get not only an updated consensus report, we'll make some adjustments after December 14th. If they ask for, hey, what's it going to cost to install fences, we'll gather that information and include that in the presentation and so forth. So in April, they're going to see the survey data. We most likely will bring it to the commission too prior to going to council. We'll see how the timing works on all of that. It's still to be determined as the survey results are coming in. So that's the survey. Again, it's going to be statistically valid, part of the Off-Leash Task Force. We heard from many of our participants in the task force saying this has to be right. We don't want everybody across the world being able to fill out the survey and now it impacts Inglewood. And I would agree with that. We want to get this right, and hopefully so we can move forward with a positive program in place that we won't have to address day in and day out regarding off-leash dogs. So that's the survey. Are there any questions on that? Like I said, I'm going to send this out to you all. You'll probably get an email. It'll either be myself or Debbie sending it out, and you'll probably have a week to look at it. We're not going to give too much more because we are trying to get this done by the end of this year. So you'll have about a week. We'll give you more information when that email comes out as far as what your response time is. Any questions?
I don't have any, and I don't see any questions.
Okay, so this is just another part of the next steps, which I kind of walked through there. So that's all.
Cute picture. Again, I love dogs.
We all love dogs. This is a tough topic, and Jim brings up a great point, about field usage and being in the Parks and Rec field. We look at trends and how things shift over years, and what used to be, people would gather after work at a park and play a game, volleyball, whatever. We don't see that happening as much. We don't see that community as much, but we have heard and we have seen the off-leash dog community out in Forest, especially Jason Park. I've seen him in Emerson. I've been by Duncan and watched people interacting through that. And so we have to be aware of those trends and changes in our community. And many people don't, like myself, I don't have kids, I have dogs. And, I want to take them and socialize with other dogs. And I know, Christine, you mentioned you have a dog. And so there's a social aspect to that we want to be sure we're capturing these new trends. And people are raising their dogs like they're raising kids. And we want to address that and keep everybody safe that are in our parks. We don't want kids in our parks getting bit. We don't want dogs getting hurt. We don't want people to be afraid to come to our parks. And so that's why fencing has been proposed. And we still have a lot of work to do. Hopefully not as much as we've seen over this last year, but we're getting close to having a recommendation and a program in place. And just a quick update too, the park ranger interviews have happened. I believe a selection has been made. And so the ranger will also have a big play in all of this as well. And so I'm actually really glad there's somewhat of a delay. It's not going to happen January 1. We'll see a change April and beyond. And maybe July 1st, this all gets done. We'll see as we present this to the council, kind of their appetite. And one other comment to make too is, yes, we're adding more to the program. Council had an appetite to add more versus take away. And we heard that comment when the Parks and Rec Commission subcommittee presented is, our mayor said, oh, I thought we were adding, not taking away. So we kept that in mind too. We know there's a need. We know a lot of people have dogs. We know we have a lot of visitors to Inglewood who have dogs. And we just want everything to be a safe environment for everybody to have a good time when they come to our parks. So with that, do you have any questions for Steve or I? Steve, I appreciate you being on the call tonight and giving this presentation. If you're up for it, we'll be on Monday night's council meeting as well, presenting this, just to kind of get a feel for what council may be up for. It's really just for, presentation only. No decision's going to be made whatsoever. It's just to give them an update, just like we gave you guys an update tonight.
I'd just like to add through this whole process, what a wonderful job Steve did. This is a very difficult, it's a very emotional topic. And I just have been totally impressed that we've gotten to where we are today. And I don't think we ever could have without his help and guidance.
I agree with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, just to point this out.
If nothing else, Steve kept us calm.
That's
The
important.
original task force that I was on going back to, I don't know, 2001, whenever it was, 2002, we had to have a police sergeant that was doing the work there. So, yeah, we've come a long way.
The task force did a great job. They had opinions, they had ideas, they were willing to express those, and that's what makes for a good task force, and I think ultimately a good outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a couple of other comments. I want to second, third, fourth, the working with Steve on this task force. This is the first time I've ever been involved in any kind of mediation like this, and I hope if I ever have to be involved with it again, that I have somebody like Steve running it. And I also wanted to just tack on to what Christine and Christina said in closing, talking about park usage, modern park usage, that, this is symptomatic of what's going on all over Colorado. I mean, you look at that, you look at the picture in back of Steve, and people are moving here by the droves because they want that. They want to go use that, and any recreational facility, place there is, it's really being taxed right now, and it's not just, not just because people are moving here in droves, but also with COVID too. Being outside is one of the, being outside in the fresh air and in the wild is still one of the things that you can do on a regular basis. And so just wanted to add that in. So
Appreciate that.
I just wanted to mention too, on the slides, and the slide that was the Northwest Greenbelt, I know when I printed them, what printed was much larger than what showed up on the screen on the slide. And I think it shows better that a whole lot more area in that Northwest Greenbelt that is off leash than just that one block, that one partial block. So it prints better than it shows on the slide because the slide doesn't pick it all up.
We'll mention that on Monday night too, that the Northwest Greenbelt is actually the whole Northwest Greenbelt, and share that with council. It's not just that one little parcel of it.
Yeah.
There are 3 sections to Northwest Greenbelt, and the section that is in that photograph is commonly referred to as Section 1. The 2 other sections are further to the east. They're not quite as spacious, but it does give people a huge amount of area to play and exercise their dogs.
Great. So do we need to make an action on this? Or
You guys, yeah, if the commission agrees with this, it's like the consensus. You may not all agree on every single thing that was presented, but if you feel comfortable moving forward with this, it would be good to share with council that the Parks and Rec Commission has reviewed this. They agree or don't agree with moving forward. And again, it is a work in progress. The survey could come back and we might make some changes from this, or council may make some changes too. So I would say, yeah, if we could get just a consensus if we have an agreement or not.
Sure. And I mean, I just have a comment leading into this, that I would like to be respectful of this process and support this recommendation moving forward, but I would like it to be noted that there were concerns from the commission, and that those can be worked out later or through survey results. But I would like it to be noted that there were concerns with this, but I do want to respect all of the work that has gone into this. So I'm in favor of moving this forward with that tiny little caveat. Is there any opposition to moving this forward?
I don't have opposition. I am in favor of it, but with modifications, basically like you said, probably a little larger than what you said, but I'm in favor of moving forward for sure.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. I am going to take the silence as consensus that we would like to move it forward to council on Monday. Again, expressing some concern, but supportive of moving it forward.
Perfect, thank you. And we will let council know that there are concerns, but you guys do agree in moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it might be nice, Christina, if we have a formal motion from the commission to bring forward to city council, and just and put it in a perspective as it stands today, that you're supportive of it, knowing that council may change things or the survey may change things. I think those are important things to note, but I think it would be nice to have a formal motion.
Okay. Would anybody entertain that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve conceptually moving forward with furthering the process of looking at what the task force has accomplished and suggested in their presentation.
Thank you, Jim. I knew that you would word that well. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any opposed? I'm going to assume that means we're all in favor. Thank you, everyone. I am going to move us right along to staff's choice.
Dave, do you have, you want to start with any updates?
Sorry, I should have directed that.
So I'm going to scoot out of here. I appreciate all of your time. Thank you very much. And we'll continue to work on this process.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Just a short, brief update. The Romans Park improvements continues to move along. We're going to finish those up hopefully here before the end of the year. And then on January 4th, I'm taking forward to City Council for approval a contract for Phase 2 improvements. We had a bid with 11 bidders for the Phase 2 improvements, and Singing Hills, which is the current contractor, was low bid. So that's the good news. They already are out there and acquainted, and then they will start in earnest next year on the Phase 2 improvements. So I look at that with a lot of excitement. And we're also on the 4th of January taking to council for approval the replacement of the driving range netting. That was an expensive endeavor. That netting has been in there 12 years. It's estimated to last about 8 to 10. So we've outlived its lifespan. It seems like every time we have a heavy snowstorm or a severe wind, more of the panels get ripped down. So we know it's time to replace the bulk of them. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And I just wanted to thank everybody for your time over this last year. It's been great seeing you in these Zoom meetings. I wish we could have been in person, but it is what it is this year. And I hope you all have a great holiday and look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Debbie, do you have anything for us?
I don't, but I second what Christina said. Wish all you guys a happy holiday.
Thanks. I know I realized that this was the last in-person meeting I had, I think, before we shut down. Was that Thursday evening? Okay, Commissioner's choice. I'm just going to go on my screen. So Karen, do you have anything?
Just everybody be careful, be safe, and have a wonderful new year, hopefully.
Thanks, Karen. Jim.
I have nothing other than happy holidays to everybody and looking forward to the new year.
Stephen.
Echo that. I've got nothing. Happy holidays, and hopefully 2021 is better than 2020.
Monica.
Yeah, just hang in there, everybody. And hopefully I'll meet you all in person someday.
Kate.
Same. Happy holidays, and I can't wait for 2021. We can meet in person, and we'll have to have an after commission beer when we're actually all together in real life again.
Sold. And I don't have anything either. So if there are no other comments for the evening, I will adjourn the meeting.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Paul.
Thank you. Happy holidays.